242 people boarded Air India Flight 171 on June 12, 2025. Only one walked away alive. For 2 months, Vishwash Kumar Ramesh has remained mostly silent, haunted by what he witnessed in those 32 seconds of terror. Today, he's finally ready to tell the truth about what really happened inside that doomed Boeing 787. And what he reveals will change everything you thought you knew about surviving the impossible. Seat 11A. Window seat, emergency exit row. That's where 40-year-old British citizen Vishwash Kumar Ramesh was sitting when Air India Flight 171 began its takeoff roll from Ahmedabad Airport. He was returning home to London with his brother Ajay, who was seated several rows behind him. They had just finished visiting family in India. It was supposed to be a routine 8-hour flight home. After takeoff, within a minute, it felt like the plane came to a standstill in air for 5 to 10 seconds, Ramesh recalled from his hospital bed, his voice trembling as he spoke to Indian television. The green and white cabin lights turned on in the flight. I could feel engine thrust increasing to go up, but it crashed with speed into the building. But what Ramesh witnessed next would haunt him forever. What he saw in those final moments before impact was so terrifying, so unimaginable, that it took him 2 months to find the courage to speak about it publicly. Everything happened in front of my eyes, Ramesh told reporters, his hands shaking as he recalled the moment. I thought I would die. The air hostess died before my eyes. I saw other passengers die in front of me. When I got up, there were bodies all around me. I was scared. I stood up and ran. Here's what makes Ramesh's survival so extraordinary and so terrifying. Aviation experts say his location in the aircraft should have been a death sentence. Seat 11A sits directly above the wing spar, one of the strongest parts of the aircraft structure. When the Boeing 787 slammed into the BJ Medical College hostel, that's exactly where the main impact occurred. CNN's safety analyst David Susi called Ramesh's survival incredibly surprising. That seat is right where the spar of the wing would go under, and it would be a solid place for the aircraft to hit the ground. But as far as survivability above it, that is incredibly surprising, he explained. So how did Ramesh survive when everyone around him perished? The answer lies in a series of impossible coincidences that saved his life and the horrifying reality of what happened to everyone else. The side where I was seated fell into the ground floor of the building, Ramesh explained. There was some space. When the door broke, I saw that space and I just jumped out. The door must have broken on impact. There was a wall on the opposite side, but near me, it was open. But here's the terrifying part that Ramesh initially couldn't bring himself to talk about. He spent 10 to 15 minutes inside the wreckage, searching desperately for his brother Ajay, while fires raged around him and bodies lay scattered throughout the cabin. I believe in God, Ramesh said, his voice breaking. I am still waiting for my brother, who was traveling with me. When he called us, he was just more worried about my other brother, like find Ajay. That's all he cares about at the moment. The reality that Ramesh faced inside that burning aircraft is almost too horrific to imagine. He was conscious, mobile, and surrounded by the bodies of people who just moments before had been chatting, reading, preparing for their arrival in London. Flight attendants who had just served refreshments. Families with children, business travelers. All gone in an instant. I could not believe what I saw, Ramesh later admitted. I just stood up and started running. There were pieces of the plane all around me. Someone grabbed hold of me and put me in an ambulance and brought me to the hospital. The security footage from that day shows Ramesh limping away from the crash site in a blood-stained white t-shirt, clutching his mobile phone. His face was lacerated, his left hand burned by the flames, his body covered in injuries, but he was walking, talking, alive. What Ramesh experienced in those minutes inside the wreckage, the sights, the sounds, the smells of death and destruction, has left psychological scars that may never heal. By July, just 1 month after the crash, reports emerged that Ramesh was receiving psychiatric treatment for severe trauma. He does not talk much, sources close to the family revealed. Vishwash is unable to cope with the trauma of the plane crash, which was one of the most horrific in the history of the Indian aviation industry, the image that haunts Ramesh the most. Carrying his brother Ajay's remains 6 days after the crash. On June 18th, Ramesh was photographed at the mortuary, grief-stricken and traumatized, collecting his brother's body for the final journey home to London. But there's something else that Ramesh revealed in his interviews that makes his survival even more chilling. He described feeling the plane come to a standstill in mid-air before the crash. This matches perfectly with the flight data recorder evidence that both engines lost power simultaneously just seconds after takeoff, the fuel control switches mysteriously moving to the cutoff position. "I could feel engine thrust increasing to go up," Ramesh recalled, "but it crashed with speed into the building." This means Ramesh actually felt the moment when the pilots desperately tried to restart the engines. He experienced those final seconds when Captain Sab Harwell and First Officer Kunder fought to save the aircraft. He felt their last desperate attempt to gain altitude, to turn back to the airport, to somehow prevent the inevitable. Aviation experts call survival stories like Ramesh's extraordinary because they shouldn't happen. Professor Graham Braithwaite from Britain's Cranfield University explained, "An aircraft crash landing in an uncontrolled way in a built-up area and when full of fuel is one of the worst scenarios in terms of survivability. When there's a single survivor like this, there is nothing you can do to be that person," Braithwaite continued. "It had to be a small amount of luck in this case that was bestowed upon this individual. It may have been the angle that it hit, the building it hit, the miracle in Seat 11, as British media dubbed him, survived because of a perfect storm of impossible circumstances. The aircraft hit the building at exactly the right angle. The emergency door by his seat broke in exactly the right way. The wall on his side of the plane collapsed, creating an escape route. The wall on the opposite side remained intact, trapping everyone else. But survival came with a price that Ramesh is still paying today. The survivor's guilt, the trauma of witnessing mass death. The knowledge that he lived while his brother, sitting just a few rows away, died. The haunting question that will follow him forever: why me?" Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Ramesh in the hospital. Home Affairs Minister Amit Shah met with him personally. He's been called a miracle, blessed by God, impossibly lucky. But Ramesh himself struggles to understand his survival. "I can't explain," he told Indian broadcaster Doordarshan, still in shock weeks after the crash. "It's a miracle. I don't know how I managed to escape." The truth that Ramesh finally revealed after 2 months of silence is more terrifying than any conspiracy theory or cover-up. It's the brutal reality of how quickly life can change, how randomly death can strike, and how surviving the impossible sometimes means carrying a burden heavier than death itself. Today, Vishwash Kumar Ramesh continues his physical and psychological recovery in London with his wife and child. He carries the memories of 241 people who didn't make it home. He carries the image of his brother Ajay, who traveled with him but died just rows away. He carries the knowledge that sometimes survival isn't a blessing, it's a responsibility. The flight number AI-171 has been permanently retired. The aircraft type has been grounded and inspected worldwide. The fuel control switches have been redesigned. But for Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, the trauma of Flight 171 will never end. He broke his silence not to celebrate his survival, but to honor those who didn't survive. To make sure their voices are heard through his. This is the real story of Air India Flight 171's only survivor. A man who lived through the impossible and now must find a way to live with it. His silence wasn't protection, it was processing. And now that he's finally ready to speak, his truth is more powerful than any investigation report. If this story moved you as much as it moved me, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We uncover the human stories behind aviation's biggest mysteries. What do you think about survivor's guilt and the psychological impact of being the only one to walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next investigation.